love to hear a little bit about, when you started in aesthetics and what made you really sort of take that endeavor and adventure.
I started my first location in 2008. Fun fact, after I signed all the paperwork and everything, getting ready to get started and arranging the funding, the market crashed.
Wow, that's a lot.
Partway through building that out, I ran out of money, liquidated my savings, sold my car. It was a
Living the
fancy
dream.
car. I went all in, Stephen. I was not profitable for the first 5 years. I was losing money. So I had to work the night shifts just to fund the business.
There's different obstacles and challenges when you're expanding.
A mistake that people make is they naturally assume that because you have a vision, you're a natural leader. At the end of the day, you are not an entrepreneur. You are basically just an employee/prisoner of your own practice.
Stephen Hattiside's your host, and I have a very special guest today, a good friend and colleague, Dr. Hardik Soni, who is the founder and director of Ethos Aesthetics and Wellness. Welcome to the show, Dr. Soni.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Stephen.
Hey, so you've had an incredible journey up until this date. I know you're involved with a number of different types of businesses, such as the Ethos Medspa, Aesthetic Nexus. But behind the scenes and the time that you find, and I don't know how, is you've been growing Ethos into a multi-location, very successful business. So love to hear a little bit about, when you started in aesthetics and what made you really sort of take that endeavor and adventure to sort of scaling and building a really successful med spa group.
Yeah, I'd like to say that I planned everything out from the beginning, but, it was surely by accident. I fell into this space. When I look at some of the younger professionals that are coming into this space, they kind of dive headlong. When I first started, we didn't know how big this space would be. I think to some extent, there was still a lot of stigma around some of these procedures, namely Botox. It's people are like, "Oh my God, that's a poison you're putting in your face." And so, in 2005 and six, I was fresh out of residency by training. I'm an ER physician, and I got an offer to be a medical director for a med spa that was opening. I had no idea what it was, but people approached me. They're like, "We'll pay for your training." Being young, I'm always curious and I wanted to learn something. And you're always very gung ho. You're fresh, you're ready to go. And I felt it would be a nice little kind of excursion from the regular stressors of ER. Little could I have known that in some respects, aesthetics can be equally as stressful. And so at that time, I took a 1-day course, Stephen. And in that 1-day course, a couple of hours was spent on Botox, a couple of hours was spent on fillers. And following week, I was actually taking care of patients. Now, in retrospect, I probably should have known better because it didn't feel right. And here's an ER physician. I'm used to dealing with life and death situations, people that are crashing right before your eyes. You got to make split-second decisions. But boy, I tell you, I was so nervous when I was doing the first couple of weeks, couple of months, patients, treating them with Botox and fillers. And our understanding of anatomy and danger zones and complications and risks and potential for blindness and stroke, like none of this existed. And almost being unaware was probably a little bit of serendipity. And it's only by the grace of God I didn't hurt anyone. And that's how I got started in it. I started working for someone else. And as I got more and more involved, I felt like I could do it on my own. And again, it's anytime you try to build something, I think the people that succeed the most are the ones that don't understand how difficult it's going to be. I think in retrospect, had I known where that journey would take me, I don't know if I would have left a stable profession. And so it's almost that innocent, complete lack of awareness that got me in this field. And shortly after working for someone else, I started my first location in 2008. Fun fact: after I signed all the paperwork and everything, getting ready to get started and arranging the funding, the market crashed. The housing market, if you recall, and
Yeah.
partway through building that out, I ran out of money, couldn't get a loan anywhere. And the loans I did get were physician loans, but they were at exorbitant interest rates. We're talking about 17, 18, 19%.
Wow, that's a lot.
Liquidated my savings, sold my car. It was a sports car, as an attending, very proud of it. Bought a fancy little car for myself.
Oh,
Had
I
to get
thought you were going to say it was a Toyota or a Datsun, and it
no, no,
was
no.
smoking out the back, and you got rid of it. And no, it was a fancy car, huh?
No,
You
no,
were
it was a
living the
fancy
dream.
car. I went all in, Stephen. And, that's why people are shocked to realize that surprisingly, doctors aren't as wealthy as everyone thinks they are, whether it's a lack of understanding of finances or being steeped in debt coming out of medical school. But the point is that here I'm starting a business. And again, kind of the lack of awareness on how difficult it would be, the money required, the systems you need to have in place, hiring people, managing people. Each one of
Yeah,
those things was a first for me. These are not things that were taught. I don't have inherent business intelligence, if you will. So again, it's just kind of this blind faith that I'm going to keep going. And if I solve enough problems, kind of
right.
make it.
Yeah.
And
But
so
that's something quite common. You see a lot of general practitioners or working in different fields, like in terms of ER, is they're taking that step, and some, I suppose, have the ability to put one foot in and one foot out, and you've seen that before. They might do some after hours and injecting patients with Botox and fillers. They don't want to fully commit. We know that in the aesthetic side, it is very different, right? People are not there because they're sick. They want to beautify themselves, and the treatments are very, very different, right? And so, one, you've got to re-educate yourself on that, and then secondly, which I'm sure you'll get into, is the business part. Let alone just setting up the first practice, but then extending it to multiple ones. There's different obstacles and challenges when you're expanding from two to three, three to five, etc. Right?
it's a great point, and I'll address two of the things that you mentioned that are critical. One is that to really succeed in this field, this is not something that you do on the side. Even when I started, I was open 6 days a week and I would work night shifts in the ER, go home, sleep for a couple of hours, go to the spa. And at that point, maybe I would see two, three patients. So I would get a little bit of nap in between. And then I would go back to the ER because we have three shifts in a row. So oftentimes it was just like being in a zombie state. And to your second point, building one or two locations I was able to do through basically trial and error. Again, there was no great insight on my part, much to my chagrin. There was no deep understanding of running a business. It was trial and error and praying that I had enough money to keep the business going. That's why I had to work the night shifts just to fund the business because I was not profitable for the first 5 years. I was losing money. And I
Yeah.
went all in on the website. I bought all this fancy equipment, which again was the second biggest mistake. But as I started to scale, I came to understand a couple of things. And I think for the people watching this, is that try to surround yourself or get help from people that know what they're doing. I firmly believe that if you are the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And so while I was capable of scaling to a second location on my way to a third location, I was quickly realizing that my capacity was just not there. Because I think a mistake that people make is they naturally assume that because you have a vision and you're a visionary, you're a natural leader. And those two things don't always occur, Stephen. I had the great ideas, I had the passion and desire. But at the end of the day, none of that matters unless you have the right staff, the right people, the right systems. And that's where scaling truly occurs, is that you have to have all these things in place. And if you don't, at the end of the day, you are not an entrepreneur in the traditional sense. You are basically just an employee slash prisoner of your own practice.
Yeah, and that's the same with any business, right? Like as an entrepreneur in different industries or different verticals, I think if you're working 80, 100% or working overtime, is you're an employee to your own business, right? You're not actually running the business.
Yeah.
You're literally an employee, which always cracks me up because in my early days, that's what happened to me. And you do need to seek out the right people, the right mentors to give you that good advice, but also looking for the right systems, whether that's across your onboarding and your training or anything like that, right? Because I think one of the big challenges, and before we get onto this in terms of training, first of all, I wanted to have a little bit of fun with you, Dr. Soni. And as we're talking about some of these exciting new developments that are coming out and some of the things that you've been ahead of the game in terms of implementing within, your own Ethos Medspa. Are you happy to jump into a simulation? It's a learning simulation. We're going to use our AI avatars and we're going to continue. What do you think? Where would you like to be located?
I don't know if you can see my shirt, Stephen, but the writing on it says the Caribbean/Bahamas, and so
Excellent.
this is kind of my tranquil place to go to, beautiful turquoise waters, and that's where I feel the happiest. So if you
All
can get
right.
me to the Bahamas, lickety split,
Let's
we're
go.
good to
All
go.
right. So I'm going to send you to the Caribbean. I'm going to go to my New York studio.
Here we go. All right, so you've made it to the Bahamas. You look incredibly relaxed. The only thing missing is a cocktail in your hand, but I'm sure you'll sort that out soon. Let's dive back into our conversation. As you're scaling systems, how crucial is the training element? Finding the right people is already a challenge, and retaining them is a whole different beast. Walk us through your experience so far, the good, the bad, and everything in between.
I think in terms of training traditionally, how it's been done is maybe you have some training manuals. Maybe you have a senior staff member or someone who kind of onboards the patients. But again, it's a very tedious process. I think for us to expect that we're going to hand someone a manual and tell them to go read it, or to spend a couple of days with maybe a senior member of the staff that's going to go over kind of the protocols, the procedures, checking people in and out, and how you take pictures. I mean, the list goes on and on, from kind of operations to the clinical aspect of things. It's very difficult to scale with that model. First of all, I think that for training to be truly effective, it has to be engaging. And the best form of engagement is that one-on-one engagement. But if you're trying to scale, and you're trying to open up multiple locations, you're trying to expand your business, you either have to have an army of people that you can deploy in a short period of time, combined with any kind of, the traditional LMS or educational platform that you may have given them, kind of very static, boring images. It becomes almost nearly impossible. So this is where I think that, platforms like vUnite, I've known about your platform for past several years, and I was blown away. And the way it has evolved to present times, and the way it's going to evolve over the next couple of years, I think you are far ahead of the curve in kind of recognizing the potential, because you have a potential platform. And whether it's a simulation, whether it's an interaction with kind of an AI manager or an AI trainer, when you are interacting in that capacity, I think the capacity to train, to understand procedures, the protocols, can really deploy that across multiple locations, multiple people, which is very difficult to do with the standard way of training someone.
Exactly. Even with standard online courses, a person is only going to retain so much information. With the AI coach we've been building, team members can actually put that knowledge into practice. Whether you're at the front desk or you're the provider handling a consultation, you can interact with the coach and get immediate, direct feedback on your communication style. Did you miss any key clinical information? How did you handle objections? You can even customize the difficulty. You can practice with an easy simulation or choose an extremely difficult, complaining patient, and we all know those exist. Where the industry is heading isn't just about a tick-the-box compliance exercise. It's about engaging employees on an ongoing basis where learning is fun, rewarding, and gamified with points. Crucially for MedSpa group owners, it allows you to measure training against actual business impact, specifically sales. At the end of the day, an owner wants to know that training is a profit center, not a cost center, and that it's directly reflecting in higher performance and productivity.
Yeah, Absolutely.
So where do things stand at the moment in terms of your footprint? How many locations are you currently operating? And what kind of challenges are you facing right now? Or is it all smooth sailing now that you've scaled up and got your processes and cadences in place?
Yeah, so we're at 7 locations right now, and I think the goal is to continue building those locations. Up until now, we've pretty much employed a de novo strategy. We feel like we have the secret sauce where we can go in and open up these locations and make them profitable in a relatively short period of time. Probably sometime in this year, we'll transition or kind of switch to more of a hybrid de novo slash acquisition type strategy. And no, it's gotten exponentially harder. And there is quite a jump that has to occur from each stage. There's a jump from going from 1 to 2 locations. There's a jump from going from 2 to 5 locations. And once you start approaching double-digit locations, yes, you get better at it because there is an economy of scale, certainly not only in kind of constraining the cost associated with operating these locations, but there's also an economy of scale in learning, and you get better and better at it. But we still have pain points, some of the problems that kind of arise we couldn't have anticipated once you start moving out of a certain geography. For example, if your locations are clustered within a 25-mile radius and now all of a sudden you're moving to a neighboring state, that also poses different sets of hurdles and different sets of challenges. So each step of the way is a transition period that occurs. And again, I want to emphasize this. I couldn't do this by myself. I'm not the brain behind all of this, as much as I like to feel that, oh, look what I did. No, I didn't do it. I kind of brought in the right people who can help me to understand what scaling looks like, what creating standardized protocols across all the locations looks like, how you kind of onboard people quickly and rapidly, and how you can kind of get to that profitability state in a reasonable amount of time. Because unless you hit that state quickly, you're going to start hemorrhaging a lot of money. I mean, the average med spa, it takes about 30, 40 grand at a minimum to keep the lights on. So you're really going to kind of have to start hitting those numbers. So it's just bringing in the right people, the right systems to really kind of allow us to scale.
It's incredibly exciting to watch your growth. I know just how busy you are, and I truly appreciate you sharing your time with us today. Our listeners constantly ask about taking that initial leap into aesthetics, but the second biggest question we get is from owners who have one location and want to expand. As you've shown, scaling brings an entirely different set of challenges. Having access to proven systems, mentors, and resources from people who have already walked that roadmap is invaluable. Dr. Soni, as we wrap up, what final piece of advice or parting words would you give to our listeners who are aspiring to follow in your footsteps and scale up to 7 locations and beyond?
Number one, you're doing it for the right reason, because it is one of the most difficult things I've undertaken. And life in general, just like business, especially as you're trying to scale, doesn't necessarily get easier, but your aptitude for pain and your threshold just increases. So that's the first part. Just be ready. I think I've firmly believed in my life that if you can solve enough problems or surround yourself with the right people, the right technology, the right tools to solve enough problems, there's a high degree that you're going to come out of on the other side being successful. So don't give up. Surround yourself with the right people. Know why you're doing what you're doing. And I just don't believe that failure is an option. Again, this is probably more on the verge of stupidity than any kind of thing to admire, because sometimes, you have to know when to cut your losses and quit. But I've never believed for 1 second that there wasn't a solution. I always believed I didn't look hard enough.
That is incredible advice, Dr. Soni. Thank you so much. I think you've officially earned that cocktail now. Enjoy the Bahamas and safe travels back to New Jersey tomorrow.
It's very difficult. I'm not crying over that. So
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Soni, and best of luck with your continued expansion and exciting growth ahead.
yeah, thank you so much. I had a great time.
Thanks for listening to the Future of Engagement podcast. If you want to learn how your organization can engage smarter and perform better, book a demo at vunite.com.
The Unite. Engage smarter, perform better.